Hi, I'm Nate Seberg. This is One Day Ahead. Welcome to One Day Ahead, Great Gatsby, Chapter 4. This is a web series for teachers and students keeping a day ahead of the class. So whether you've won a medal from Little Montenegro, or if you're just here to make a business connection, I offer my thoughts on this American classic and my approach for teaching it. So you likely know the deal. First we do a chapter summary, then we look at the motivations of a character, finally we hit advice for teachers. If you're one of those educators, check out my complete Great Gatsby unit by following the link in the deal. If you're just here for a refresher or new ideas, that's great. Consider supporting this channel by subscribing to it. All right, let's do the summary. So chapter 4 opens on an unnamed young woman drinking Gatsby's liquor from Gatsby's crystal on Gatsby's beach, all the while trading in the salacious rumors that surround her host. She claims he's a bootlegger, meaning he sells alcohol, something recently made illegal with the passage of Prohibition, and that he killed a man who found out he was nephew to von Hindenburg. Oh, could she be referring to Paul Ludwig Hans Anton von Breckendorf and von Hindenburg? That's his full name. He's German. Hindenburg was the supreme commander of the German military during World War I, and then he was elected president after the war. How'd that turn out for the world? Oh, he went on to appoint Hitler Chancellor of Germany. Awesome. Admittedly, he did that under pressure. All right, so you might associate his name with this, but he didn't build that. They just named it after him. Next, we get a few pages of Nick listing off the people who came to Gatsby's party. You should skip it. Jump back in when Gatsby turns up at Nick's place and announces, "You're having lunch with me today," and I thought we'd ride up together. As they drive to New York, Gatsby suddenly breaks out unprompted with his entire life story. You know, like you do. To Nick, the story sounds stale and rehearsed. He says, "With an effort, I managed to restrain my incredulous laughter. The very phrases were worn so threadbare, they evoke no image." According to Gatsby, he was raised in San Francisco in considerable wealth before being educated at Oxford. But now, everyone's dead and Gatsby has their money. He claims to have spent the time after college traveling around Europe like a young Raja and trying to forget something very sad that happened to him a long time ago. Something very sad. Worse than everyone you know dying? But that's not all. Next, Raja Gatsby is pulled into World War I, where he won a medal from every allied government, including Little Montenegro. Nick doesn't believe a word, which explains his shock when Gatsby produces an authentic medal from Little Montenegro with the inscription Major J. Gatsby for valor extraordinary. Next, he produces a photo from his Oxford days, and like Nick, we're left wondering, 1, why he carries this crap around with him, and 2, what is actually true about this guy. The rest of the drive is eventful, but not important to the plot. They pass Myrtle in the Valley of Ashes, Gatsby gets pulled over but has a "I'm rich so there are no consequences for me" card, and Nick treats us to some old-fashioned racism on 73. Good times. Things pick back up when they arrive at a speakeasy, where they meet Meyer Wolsheim. Almost immediately after they first meet, Wolsheim turns to Nick and says, "I understand you're looking for a business connection." Nick has no idea what this means, and neither do most readers until they hear it aloud. Connection is obviously gangster for connection. Gatsby jumps in, "Oh no, this isn't the man. This is just a friend. I told you we'd talk about that another time." So this exchange shows us that our boy Gatsby is in some sort of business arrangement with Wolsheim, a notorious gangster. So, file that away. During lunch, we learn that Wolsheim thinks highly of Gatsby and that his cufflinks are made from the finest specimen of human molar. That's disgusting, but I do like that they're the finest specimen. Like, he took the time to examine them for tartar buildup and passed over some other ones. So they talk and eat for a while before Tom Dumpster Fire Buchanan spots Nick from across the room and comes to say hello. Introductions are made and Gatsby looks suddenly strained and embarrassed. Next thing you know, he's just gone. So from there, the chapter makes a big jump. Now it's later in the day and Nick is having tea with Jordan Baker. It's still Nick writing, but now it's Jordan's story and Jordan's words. In short, when Jordan was in her teens, she once saw Daisy with a strapping young lieutenant named, wait for it, J. Gatsby. There's some evidence they fell in love, but her family disapproved, and at around the same time, Gatsby was shipped off to the war. A year later, Daisy has her society debut. Societal debut? I don't care. It's a rich girl, I'm growing up now, come marry me thing. And it totally works, because 3 months after the war is over, she's engaged to Tom, and 4 months after that, the night before her wedding, Daisy receives a letter. It never says who it's from, but come on. It's from Gatsby. After reading the letter, Daisy has a meltdown. She gets wildly drunk, throws away Tom's wedding gift, and keeps repeating, "Tell him how Daisy changed your mind." So things get bad. This is not cute crying. We're in ugly cry territory. So Jordan's a bridesmaid, and with the help of a chambermaid, they get Daisy into a cold tub to sober her up. And a half hour later, they have her dressed and downstairs. The next day, she marries a burning pile of garbage. I mean Tom. So it's a rough start, but then everything seems fine. According to Jordan, they're in love. They honeymoon. They start a life together. That is, until Tom is in a car wreck that makes the papers because someone with him was injured. That someone? The chambermaid from the wedding. We don't know the details of what comes next, but we do know Daisy and Tom stay together, have a kid, go to France, then Chicago, then come to New York. It seems that in all that time, Daisy had never once heard Gatsby's name until Jordan mentioned it back when Nick came over in chapter 1. When Daisy asks about it later, Jordan puts it together that Gatsby the eccentric millionaire is the same lieutenant from the car. So from there, the book jumps back to the present, because remember, Jordan is telling the story to Nick over tea. Nick says it's a strange coincidence. They both ended up on the eggs, and Jordan responds with the stunning, but it wasn't a coincidence at all. Gatsby bought that house so that Daisy would be just across the bay. Finally, Jordan gets to the point of the tea. Jordan informs Nick that Gatsby asked Jordan to ask Nick to invite Daisy over for tea. The idea is that Gatsby can just happen to, pop by. We go on to learn that Gatsby has spent the last few years scouring the Chicago papers for Daisy's name, and that he throws all these parties because each night brought with it the slim yet tragic chance that she might attend. He was hoping she would just wander in one night. As the chapter closes, Nick is undecided on what to do. I think he knows that this request is insane, but also he has the constitution of a pool noodle. So rather than making up his mind, instead he sidesteps the question altogether. He says, unlike Gatsby and Tom Buchanan, I had no girl whose disembodied face floated along the dark cornices and blinding sides, and so I drew up the girl beside me. She smiled, and so I drew her up again, closer, this time to my face. So he ends the chapter not by making a decision, but by kissing Jordan. Interestingly, it's not clear from the text if he even likes her or if he simply wants the closeness of someone who is alive and owns a face. And that's the summary. So each episode we dive deeper into a major theme of the chapter by exploring the inner motivations of a character, which is why this week's person of interest is Jay Gatsby, and the theme is dynamic people, static obsession. So, I got some questions, Jay. I'm a little freaked out by you, and I'm trying to figure out why. It's not the mind-blowing wealth, the impenetrable mystery, your silly car, or your silly rich guy language, old sport. No, I'm freaked out because, Jay, I kind of get it. When I was the same age you met Daisy, the ideas that have underpinned your life, well, they made a sort of sense to me. This desire to devote your life fully to one thing, the belief that there is glory in martyrdom, or that the worth of a goal is proportional to the difficulty of achieving it, as if it's the suffering itself that imbues the object of desire with more desirability. And Jay, you have suffered to get Daisy. But I think each obstacle made that chase and the eventual prize seem all the sweeter. Every party you threw where she didn't walk in, every paper you scanned where you didn't find her name, every time you failed and leaned a little deeper into this obsession, that only meant winning her would be that little bit more significant, right? The thing is, in all of this self-reinforcing pursuit, it can be easy to miss that people are people, and Jay, people change. Obsession is a static thing. It's fixed. It perseverates. It sits there. The word obsession features the Latin stem obsessio, meaning blockade or siege. I know because I Googled it. I do not know Latin. But I think that's an overlooked feature of obsession. It's a blockade. Nothing gets through it. Perhaps Daisy was a magical girl at one point. Perhaps your relationship had been true love, like Disney movie love. But that Daisy is gone. She's changed, grown, maybe even wilted a little. And you're so insulated in this siege that now you're in love with someone who no longer exists. At the start, I told you I had some questions, so here they are. What happens when the Daisy of reality meets the Daisy in your head? What happens when that reality falls so spectacularly short of the vision which has come to fuel your entire life? I told you, obsession is static, and now it's on a collision course with a reality that will not bend. Something is going to break here, Jay, and I'm kind of worried it might be you. Anyway, good luck with all that. With love, Nate. So this book is complex. It's a thin little volume, but there is so much packed into so little that for a teacher, it can be hard to know what to aim at. That's why I'm here. Teachers, let me give you my take. So this chapter, we finally get to direct our attention squarely at Gatsby. And now is the time to start asking the culminating question of this unit. In what way, if any, is Gatsby great? The medium you will eventually use to explore this question is up to you, but now is the time to start knocking on that door and fostering student voice and hopefully debate. Typically, I elect to have students encounter this chapter as a class. This gives them a break from the Lit Circle meetings, which can get a little stale if you overuse them. Before we read, I begin with an entry task. When thinking about dating, what is the difference between pursuit and obsession? I have them make a T-chart and brainstorm words they associate with each term. We set this list aside and I put students into groups and ask them, what do we really know about Gatsby? Then I hand them the Gatsby puzzle pieces. These are selections from the text where someone makes a claim about Gatsby's past. Link to all this below. Students read the selections, then try to construct a narrative where they could all be true at the same time. It gets silly because he's from San Fran, which is somehow in the Midwest, then everyone dies except for secret Uncle Hindenburg, then he fights with the Americans, then the Germans win some medals, kills somebody, it's a mess. But what becomes obvious is that Gatsby has clearly fostered this intrigue. You don't end up with a story this absurd by accident. He wants the spectacle, he wants his name flung wide. And it's interesting though because his behavior doesn't match that reading. He's not showing himself to enjoy the hoopla in the slightest. The guy's in the shadows, he's nowhere. The attention has no appeal to him beyond some utility that they don't know until they read the chapter. I found doing this activity before we get to Jordan's story helps the magnitude of her reveal land. There's the answer. Winning Daisy is not a side product. It has steered every decision he has made for 5 years. So just a heads up, but on a practical note, I found that students get lost when Jordan starts telling her story on 79. In that moment, we have a change in setting from speakeasy to tea to Louisville, speaker, Nick to Jordan, but it's still Nick writing, and time, present to Jordan's youth. To preempt this confusion, I read the beginning of chapter 4 with the class. When we get to 72 and Gatsby says, I happen to find out that you're taking Miss Baker to tea, I have everyone flip to 79 where Jordan starts talking and label it the tea. It totally helps. After reading, when Nick learns the truth about Gatsby's past, I have students return to the entry task list and ask them to take an initial position on Gatsby's pursuit of Daisy. That's this week's If You Only Hit One Thing. Focus on this question. Do Gatsby's actions represent a desperate and heartbreaking romance that overcomes all obstacles, or a calculated, dark, and deeply unnerving obsession? I know my position. And that's chapter 4. Don't forget to subscribe and to check out my unit by following the link in the thing. Next time we head to chapter 5, where Gatsby sends Nick flowers, everyone worries about a clock, and Daisy cries because shirts. All that and more next time on One Day Ahead.